Why does your name matter? Why does it matter what people call you? Now, this is what I want to explore in this episode. To help me do that, I want to rely on the life of a man who had so many names. His name kept changing till the day he died. Malcom X. Now, here's the thing. Malcom X's name kept changing. He did not start with Malcom X and he did not end with Malcom X. How did he come by so many names? Who gave him those names? And what was his belief about name? Let's do this. Hi, Assalamu alaikum. I want to welcome you back to Human Bound Podcast. My name is Lihambal and I am your host. Thank you very much for stopping by. I truly appreciate it. Now, here's what I always try to do in this podcast. I always try to ask questions. And these questions, I don't give clear-cut answers to them. What I try to do is to explore them. Now, here's what I believe. I believe as human beings, we have more legitimate claim to curiosity than we have to knowledge. After all, what do you know? Nothing. Here's the thing. The more we seek to know, the more we know, and the more we understand, and the more we see. And the more we see, the better we live our lives. And that is why I always try to explore questions in this podcast. Now, in this episode, I want to explore this question. Why does it matter what people call you? Why does it matter how people refer you? Today, if you so much as call people with the wrong name, you are in for a serious trouble. People lose their jobs. They make enemies. They incur the anger of people simply by assigning them the wrong pronouns. You don't do that. If he is a he, call him he, or she, or they, or them, whatever, but do not call them with the wrong pronoun, else you are in for serious trouble. Why does it matter what people call us? There are times people would like to refer to themselves with the name of their families. Why? Because they take more pride in the name of their families than they do with their own name. So why does it matter which family name you have? Now, we all have names, right? My name is Ali and my dad's name is Hambal. Simple. I do not have any other name. But if you go on social media, you may find me as Lihambal. Why did I give that name Lihambal on my social handle? But some social media platforms would like you to put your real name like Ali Hambal. But people do assign certain names for themselves to suit certain platforms. Now, these are not titles, but you may call them brand names. People have got nicknames, okay? And they would like people to call them by their nicknames. So that if you walk into any setting and you mention a name of a person you're looking for, people would go like, who is that? Because they don't know him by that name. If you go to certain areas and you say, do you know this man Ali? They would say, who is Ali? And then you say, no, you show them the picture and then they go, oh, like Hambal. And then they know me by Hambal. Because that is a group and that group knew me by certain name, okay? The same way if you go somewhere and you say, oh, I'm looking for Ali or you're looking for Hambal. Who is that? You show them the picture. So, oh, Lihambal. Yeah, you see, that is how people identify. But why the change in name? Let me read a line to you written by Shakespeare in the play of Romeo and Juliet. Take a listen, right? It reads, what is in a name? That which we call a rose by any other name would smell as sweet. And she says, it's only your name that is the enemy. You are what you are. Even though you may be a Montague, what's a Montague? It isn't a hand or foot or arm or face or any part belonging to a man. Oh, I wish you had a different name. What is so special about name? Yeah. What is so special about name? Now, to give you a background, you may know this, but Romeo and Juliet is just a play about two lovebirds. Now, they can't be together Not because they don't love each other, not because their blood group doesn't match or anything like that. They can't be with each other simply because of their family names. Now, Juliet can't be with Romeo because of Romeo's name. He is a Montague, his family name. He did not sin, but he bore the name of a family that is in serious feud with her family. How is it that the name of a person's family has that power to even affect his relationship? Now, this is a very important question. I mean, you may think this is a small thing, but today we have this creeping in our society. Now, you come from this background, and the sin of a father, they say, sins of the fathers. Your dad did something. It wasn't you. But because you came from that family, you did no sin. You did nothing wrong. But somehow we kind of bear the guilt of our fathers. I'm not saying it is the right way, and I'm not saying that is the ideal way, but the reality is people do attach certain stigma to us based on the sins of our fathers, based on where we come from. We did no sin. Now, I know in Islamic tradition, you are not supposed to bear the iniquity of your father. And God, Allah said so in the Quran. He says, وَلَا تَزِرُ وَازِرَةٌ وِزْرَ أُخْرَى, right? He says that a soul does not bear the weight of the sin of the other soul. You don't do that. If that is the case, then why is it that in our societies, we are judged by the sins of our fathers? Now, you may try to underplay this, but that is some real serious situation. I'm talking about some reality right here. Look, in our society, when a person is born out of wedlock, then that sin of his parents follows him. When we have any trouble with a man, sometimes we don't attack him, especially when we don't have anything to attack him with. We go straight to the sins of his fathers. Oh, you are even shege. You are then shege. That is a Hausa language, yeah? Then shege simply means a man born out of wedlock. And that has become a stigma. Even though you are a good child, even though you are so much productive, so much you make your communities proud, you do good things. But when you have any situation with your people, the very first thing they would use against you would be the sin of your fathers. They would cast you out because of something you did not have any hand in. And they would say you are a najis. They would just say you are a dirt. Why? Because you were born out of wedlock. We have seen that in recent, I will not mention names or anything like that, but in our community, we see people attacking people for the sin of their fathers. They are born out of wedlock and that has become their sin. How is it their sin? Were they the people engaged in that act? No. But the question is, how did it creep into a situation where people are judged by the sin of their fathers, by the name that is incurred or earned by their forefathers or something like that? And that is the same situation with Romeo and Juliet here. Now, they did nothing wrong, but because that guy was a Montague, and the Montague is in a feud with the family of Juliet, so they can't marry. They did nothing wrong. I don't know if this sounds familiar to you, but you walk into somebody's house trying to get a woman to marry, and then they would look into your background and they would say, you are a nice guy, right? You are a good guy. I mean, you're doing well. We do not know anything negative about you. But the problem is, some 50 years ago, some 100 years ago, your dad pissed in the masjid. It incurred the anger of the society. That is a no-no. You are a family of masjid pissers. We don't marry from your family. I mean, this is unjust. But basically what I'm trying to say is, when people start digging into your background, sometimes, unless you have a lot of money, which kind of blind the eyes of the investigators, but if you don't have the money and you have this dent in your background, finding a wife becomes a problem to you. I'm saying some serious situation here. I'm not saying this is what your religion or the culture promote, but that is what reality is. People today can't get married, can't get the women they love, can't get the men they love, simply because of the sins of the fathers. Names, those names. And in the same measure, some people would go and they would get it. Now, coming back to Malcom X, this same question, right? The question, what is in a name? He was asked this question in an interview. What's in a name? And here is what he had to say. I'm not going to say it. Listen to what he had to say. And if you're on YouTube, you can watch it. Take a listen.
I have no argument with your wanting to call yourself X or Y or Z or anything, and I respect your motives, but Shakespeare said, what's in a name? What difference does it make?
Sir, when you say what's in a name, black people here in America who have gone into Mississippi using the names Smith and Jones and Murphy have encountered serious barriers which immediately were eliminated when they used names such as Sharif, Hassan, Dia, and things of that sort. So when Shakespeare said, what's in a name, he probably had never lived in America with a dark skin.
They took Arabic names to make the people think they were of Arabic extraction.
A good example of that last year was mentioned in Jet, where this so-called Negro from Florida spoke with a French accent in Mississippi and gave himself another name, a foreign name, and was accepted into the veteran hospitals, white veteran hospitals. They took him for an African.
Right.
So there's much in a name. And
I understand.
Yeah.
Now, isn't that just a deep and fascinating assessment? Now, this was what Malcom X believed about names. Now, here's the thing. How did Malcom X got his name X? He did not begin as Malcom X. He began as Malcom Little. Now, you understand that Malcom X came from a family, a Christian family, and they were not so far from a very dark era in American history where black people did not have the right to do so many things. In fact, they had this stigma attached to their names and their color. And the name they bore were not names that came from their culture. As a matter of fact, when they were shipped to United States of America as slaves and being enslaved for so many years, they were cut off from their background, so they did not know their names. If you were in Africa, or in Nigeria, in Ghana, or somewhere, you may be called Kofi, you may be called Kwame, or you may be called Odugu, or you may be called Uche, or whatever. But these are African names. But when they came to the United States of America, they were called Malcom Little. Yes, westernized name. And he bore that name. And that was the name he carried as a young man. Now, his dad got murdered by the claim of his mother, and all evidence seemed to point to that direction. But because of the situation, she was denied insurance. That was something that affected her mind, and it affected the life of Malcom X's family. With passing time, she developed some mental situation, and she had to be separated from her children. This affected Malcom so much. And he even said that he does not want to talk much about his mom because he loved her so much, because he saw her sink deeper and deeper, and to lose herself, that intelligent, smart woman losing herself was something that kind of have this weight on Malcom X, so much that he said he wouldn't mention his mom to anyone, not because he was embarrassed to mention her, but because he felt scared that if someone would make a negative comment about his mom, he wouldn't hesitate to kill that person. That was why he did not have much conversation about his mom. That was how much he loved her, and that was how much it affected him to see her sink. But he got separated. Malcom Little, he was so young, about 6 years. He was taken to these homes where he was taken care by the state. He went to school. But then sometime along the line, he started to feel distanced from the situation, from his community and the school. So he moved out. He went away. So the next name he acquired, he earned, was Red, the Detroit Red. Now, how did he get the name Red? Now, Red was a name he earned out of his criminal activities. You see, when you lose a beautiful home and you see the way your dad and your mom lose their lives. Now, his dad lost his life in a very violent way, and his mom lost herself. Not died, but she lost herself. Someone says there is something worse than death, and that was to lose yourself. Now, when you die, we know you are gone. But when you are alive, but you lost yourself, you lost touch of yourself and the life, that seems to be harder for some people. That's why some people would just take their lives and commit suicide. The report says like hundreds of thousands of people commit suicide each year. Why? Because they lose their sense of self and they lost it. So there is something worse than death, some people might say. So to see his mom losing herself in that way was something that was unbearable to him. Imagine what effect that would have on a young boy. The same happened to his mom. These were so bad. And of course, it had effect on the mind of Malcolm. And it pushed him to have this wayward life. He moved out and he tried to survive. He hustled and he did this, he did that. Without education, what do you expect? Slowly but surely, he became a criminal. He did so many things. Prostitution, racketeering, drugs. He did so many things. Theft and all of that. He became so much a criminal that he was known, very well known. And there is something else, yeah? He had a lighter skin than most of his siblings. So what they used to do in this time was to kind of did something, what is comb or something they called it, but they wanted their hair to look like the white man's hair. So they used some products on their hair so that their hair would look lighter, so they could comb it back and it would look like smooth and all of that, so they would look exactly like a white man. That was a thing during the days of Malcom X. It was a thing. Now, he did that, and because of his criminal activities, because of his reddish hair, some people would say, and his light skin, he got the name Red. Yes, Detroit Red, sometimes they call him. That was how he got his name. It was not a positive name. No, it was not a positive name. And those who called him Red were people who knew him in the ghettos. So he was called Red. Now that is so interesting. He bought this name Red and he kept doing this criminal activities. Very bad guy. Very, very bad guy. So with the passage of time, it caught up with him. What happened was he had this white girl, and Sophia, she was his girlfriend for a very long time. The whites didn't like it when white ladies kind of have black guys as their girlfriends. They didn't like it. As a bad guy, he convinced them to join him in burglary work, so they stole from houses. When they got caught, he was sentenced to prison. When he went to the prisons, then his name changed again, from being Red to now being called a Satan. A Satan he was called. Why is that? Because in the prisons, he did not have any likeness for religion. In fact, he was more than an atheist. Beyond that, he disliked religion entirely. And his behavior in the prisons is like a devilish kind of behavior. People had this stigma attached to the way they see him, and they would just give him that name. So they called him Satan. It is amazing how people just give us names because of who we are, because of the way we carry ourselves about. I don't care what you call yourself, but someone somewhere has got a name for you. That is just the way it is. I just don't care what you call yourself. Someone somewhere has got a name for you. You know why? Because people give us these names based on the way they perceive us. You would be shocked what people call you in their circles. Now, if you walk into any circle and they mention a certain name, you may be wondering, who is that person? That person might be you, because that was the way they perceive you. Now, people give us names based on what they think we are and the way they perceive us. They give us names. You see, sometimes you just don't have control over these things. If you want to be yourself, they might choose to call you rude. They might choose to call you pompous. They might choose to call you arrogant. They might even give you some name you do not know, but that is just to tell you how they feel about you. That's just to tell you how they see you. Now, you do not have any control over this. So he was given the name Satan whilst he was in jail. And he was referred to as Satan for a while until he got introduced to the version of Islam brought by Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Now, he had this tremendous effect on the life of Malcolm, and it saved him. It pushed him to read more, to understand more, and because of reading and searching and all of that, he became saved. He got saved from that sinking ship, and he kind of pulled himself out of that devilish dark side of world of himself, and then he now became a Muslim. Now that Islam was Elijah Muhammad's version of Islam, where Elijah Muhammad was the prophet ultimately, and the doctrine is simply this: the white people were the devil, clear cut, and the black people were the people of God, and they were here to save the world. Now you have to believe that. And it wouldn't take much for Malcom X to believe that, because he saw how the ghetto life and all of that affected his life, especially when he saw how his dad was killed, when he saw how he lost his mom. It didn't take much to convince him that the white man was a devil man. Now, this was a belief, and it kind of clicked with what he saw. Let me just pause here and then reflect, right? Reflect. Sometimes things happen and we interpret them based on our experiences of life. Now, that doesn't make them true, okay? Because certain things have an evidence from your past experience doesn't make them true. Now, I'm going to prove that, and the life of Malcom X proved that, clearly. Sometimes, people just say things to you. They tell you this is the thing, and they would ask you to think about it. And for sure, when you think about them in your life, right, you would find instances that confirms what that person is saying. And you would be inclined to say, the guy is telling the truth. If it's not true, why did this happen to me? It's this person who did this to me. We have to just be careful about what we believe, about what people tell us. Here's what I'm saying. Just hear me out. Now, we all have our bad experiences, right? When a person is trying to hit a button, what he does is to sow a seed. Now, that seed would always have a trace of some experience in your past life. Now, those things, you can easily connect it with what he is saying. And if he says, this guy is the enemy, you can easily point it out and connect it to what that person has done or what someone related to that person has done to you in the past, and you will just confirm it. I think that is the same thing the conjurers and the Boka people. Now, when we say Boka people, we are talking about the sorcerers. Now, Boka is just an African word for a sorcerer, a magician, black magic. They try to say to you that your problem is this, and they would mention the name of a person. Now, there is a high likelihood that you might have some kind of a problem or issue with that person. Now, you did not take it to be anything. But when a person approaches you and tells you that this person is that person, you can easily refer back and say, you are right. And that was the problem of Malcom X. When he was told that the white man was the devil himself, it wouldn't take much for him to believe that, because he saw the white man in action as his father was killed and as his mother lost herself. And the way he lived his life and the way he was treated by the white people. So he had to believe that. And that moved him to that version of Islam. But it did something quite magnificent, quite amazing to Malcom X. It pulled him out of his immoral ways and his dark ways. And then he became a better person, at least better than he was before. Because now he wouldn't do prostitution. 2, he wouldn't do racketeering. 3, he wouldn't do drugs. He wouldn't sleep with women around. he wouldn't do all of that. He would not even steal. Now he is fully dedicated to living a good life, a moral life, and learning. He became quite knowledgeable. But then he had to change his name once again. How did he do that? Now you say, Malcom Little wasn't your name. Malcolm would take it, but Little is not your name. Your real name is unknown. It's taken away from you as you were getting away from Africa. So we would have to replace that Little with X. Now, you know, in mathematics, when you're trying to find the equation or solve the equation, there is this X that symbolizes an unknown thing, an unknown figure. Until you solve the equation, you wouldn't know the value of X. So you would have to be assigned the name X because your real name is yet to be uncovered. And when that name comes, then we would take away X and then you would replace it with your name. So the whole people of Nation of Islam had this X as their last name. That is how Malcom X got the name X. He bore that name. He did some very good things with the name. That name kind of pushed Malcom Little to the background. It pushed Red to the background. Red was something he earned when he was a bad man. Now, Satan was something he earned when people find him very, very devilish. Now, X had some meaning because now you're trying to find your true identity. You become in a state of searching your true name. So he bore name Malcom X. And as he was living, there came a time when he had to part ways with the Nation of Islam because of so many things that were happening. And when he left, he went for Hajj. And when he went for Hajj as a Muslim, he did Hajj and they gave him a different name as a Muslim because X was something given to him by the Nation of Islam. But now you have a Muslim identity. So let's call you Hajj Malik El Shabaz, a Muslim name. Many of us bear Muslim names. I don't know. Very few people would actually bear maybe a cultural name or a family name, like a name that isn't religiously affiliated, be it Christian, be it Muslims. Many of us bear the name, our religious name, and we wouldn't even know what our cultural name is. I am called Ali, and Ali is a name of a Muslim leader back in the days of the Prophet, peace be upon him. Now, someone might be called Abdel Nasser, and it has this religious connotation because he is the servant of God. So Abdullah is also the same thing, and Muhammad is the name of the Prophet of Islam, Muhammad ibn Abdullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, you see, these are the names we bear, especially in countries where religion has got this huge influence. So you tend to lose your cultural name because it had that influence for a very long time that you don't even know how you would be called, how your family would be called. And people would love to use their religious names so that immediately when you mention your name, your religion is identified. I mean, it's so easy to identify a religion of a person by the virtue of his name. It's so easy. But still, in Africa, so many people, so many cultures still have preserved their cultural name so that they are called by their cultural name. So Malcom, when he went to Hajj, he was given Abdul Malik, he was given Hajj Malik El Shabaz. So he became Muslim and he identified with the religion of Islam so deeply. But then right from there, he visited Africa. He visited Ghana, he visited Nigeria. And in Nigeria, he met the Yoruba people, and the Yoruba people gave him the name Omowale. Now, I don't know. Omowale, they say it means the son that has returned. So he left home as a slave, his grandfathers, forefathers. Now he has returned back, so they gave him that name. So he bet all these names and went back to Africa and was given this name. And he had all these names. Question is, why does it matter what people call you? Why does it matter? I mean, if you have, by the virtue of your name alone, people could give you privileges. That is the world in which we are. I mean, you could walk into any place, and the moment you mention your name, people would extend regards. People would extend courtesies. People would give you respect. People would want to associate with you because of the name. Now, if you go somewhere and you say, I am from you just mentioned Rothschild, for example. Wow, big name. Okay. You go somewhere and you say, so-and-so Obama. Oh, wow. You go there and you mention bin Malik bin Saud. Wow, big names. So you see, by the virtue of your name, people would just give you respect. I don't know what it is, but here is what I think. I think it's because not just the name, it's because of what the name symbolizes. Now, it's not about a name. Now, we have instances where people just want to create a name out of everything and expect it to work. I don't think it works. I think it's not about the beauty, okay? And it's not about how nice the name is. You could design your name however you want, okay? If you call Ali, if you are called Omar, if you are called Gina, if you call Layla or whatever. It doesn't matter how well you design your name in writing, how you carve it in stone. It would mean nothing unless there is something to back that name to make it strong. Now, these names that I just mentioned to you are names that had history. Today, there are people that bear the name Al-Bayt. Now, Al-Bayt are the people that came from the home of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Today, we give them so much respect, we accord them so much privileges, and you can't even get close to what we accord them. Why? Because they bear the name of a man whose mark would remain unto the earth till thy kingdom come. That was how it is. Now, the people I just mentioned to you are people who bore the name of people who did something in life. So these names are earned. I just told you the story of Malcom X. Now, X was something that meant something, was a name that meant something. When he was called Red, that name wasn't given to him just like that. He earned it by his criminal enterprise back in the day. So you see, names would mean something if you do something with them, so that they are easily identifiable. So that when that name is mentioned, something clicks in the mind. Something comes to mind. And because of how that name affected the world, people would give it certain regards. This is why certain names would have a very, very bad impression. Now, you wouldn't start a business, okay? And then in the name of your business would call Hitler Association. What? Hitler Association? No, you wouldn't go far with that business. And thank God with that. In fact, the whole world is going to fight you because you have named your business with something that is generally agreed as a bad name. Some people do incur themselves a bad name. So, name would be nothing if there was nothing to back it up with some action and some real achievement in life. That's why when people take pride in their names, okay, then it is not just the name. It is the meaning of the name. Not just the meaning, the backbone of the name. The thing or the actions or the history behind the name. Now that is why I think name is important. Now some of us didn't have or don't have a name that has strength in terms of background, okay, such that we don't have in our background a name of a person who has earned that much, that we could use that name as some kind of security everywhere we go. Good name is very valuable. Some of us don't have good name. Some of us are unknown. You are not known anywhere. You could just walk anywhere and you mention your name and we go like, okay, who is that? You are a nobody. But if you bear the right name, a name that has done something that means something, you walk everywhere, anywhere, and people will just respect you. So what do you do when you don't have such names? What do you do when you are born without these kind of big names? Are you then doomed? Okay, are you doomed for not having like big names? I don't think so. I don't think so. You see, here's what I think. I think every man is responsible for himself. Irrespective of what name you bear, you are responsible for your own name. I mean, before the big names became big names, there were no names at all, until someone came around and did something that made that name respectable. So if we are not born to bear any names, I think we have the responsibility to make our own names. Yes, we have that responsibility to make our own names. And that is where the greatness comes from. What you do with your name. If we are a nobody, then it is upon us to do something that would communicate respect, that would put and stamp our names in the heart and minds of people. Now, is that even necessary? Now, it depends on what you want in life, isn't it? Perhaps you don't need to make any name for yourself. I mean, there are nameless people, but they are so great. So great, they don't care about names. All they care about is how well they live. In fact, I believe some people have a great reputation in the shadows. You don't name them, they operate in the shadows. Great people, but you don't see them. They do not have any attachment or any big thing to give them. Their reputation is enough. So they are good. They just live. You don't need to know them. They are good. So here is the thing. Name comes with reputation. If you don't have reputation, your name, I believe, is worthless. And if you are not born with any name, I believe it is upon our responsibility to get our own reputation. And it takes time and it takes effort. That's what I think. But the names that we bear, somehow, in this world in which we live, it has effect on how we navigate our ways. It has effect on how well we do, on how far we go. Now, you may say it's not important, but I think it is. I think it is. If we can have any chance, if we have any chance in this life, I think we must build some reputation. We must build some character. And it is these characters and reputations that build our names. And our names become collateral and they become something that we could exchange for value. Name, I think, is very valuable. It is so meaningful. It is deep. It means something. And of course, it would mean nothing if you do not give any regard to them and if you do not give them any reputation. Okay, that's what I think. Let me know what you think under the comment section, and I always appreciate the time. See you next time. Assalamu alaikum.